So over the last 2 or 3 years, I'd say that watch enthusiasts or the watch industry in general has been shrinking. Everyone seems to like smaller watches now. And you can see this from the big brands like Tudor releasing the Tudor Black Bay 54 or the 58 or the Pelagos 39. They are all releasing small iterations of previously more chunky watches. And that's just because the trend is kind of going that way. So in this video, I'm going to be counting down the top 10 watches for smaller wrists, all of which come in below or around 40 millimeters, and they sit wonderfully. The Goldilocks size in terms of wrist for these watches, I would say is below 7 or 6.5 inches. Welcome back to the Chisholm Hunter channel. My name is Harrison, as always. And the first watch that I identified that's just perfect for smaller wrists and also is just one of the most perfect watches I've ever had the privilege of wearing is this, the Grand Seiko Icefall 37 millimeters. The case diameter on this watch comes in at 37 millimeters. The lug to lug comes in at 44.6 millimeters and the thickness comes in at 13.3 millimeters. So I had this watch on in Iceland and I filmed the project on it over around about 5 days. And honestly, when I compare it to my Grand Seiko American exclusive, which is that little bit more chunky, the transition to go smaller at the start was weird, but then I realized how chunky and big my other Grand Seiko was after I got used to wearing this one, and it felt weird going the other way. Honestly, the specs on this watch, never mind the dial, is just beautiful. The dial on this watch kind of looks like, you guessed it, Icefall, and that's inspired from the dead of winter on Mount Iwate. Grand Seiko have always been, in my opinion, the king of dials. I love the artist's nature, the artist's reflection of something that's going on in real life. It's bringing a piece of the world, the beautiful blue planet, onto your wrist, and I just love that. The movement on this watch is the caliber 9S85, and this is a fully automatic movement with 55 hours of power. It's accurate to +5 to -3 seconds a day. This watch also comes in ever brilliant stainless steel, has beautiful polishing, and honestly, as a dressy watch, I think it just nails every single category that you could put it in. And actually, I got one of the best shots I've ever got of a watch, of this watch in Iceland. I've actually got it for, wait, give me 2 seconds, I'll actually get it for you. So this is the watch just here. I'm actually going to bring it a bit closer to the camera at the moment. So essentially my plan with this picture was to capture the essence of the Icefall with the Grand Seiko Icefall. And actually this is snapped on a piece of glacier ice that's fallen from a glacier and washed up on the Diamond Beach in Iceland. Honestly, I'm going to start going off on tangent, but it's a beautiful watch and brilliant for smaller wrists. The Grand Seiko Icefall, if you want to do it in US dollars, it comes in $6,900 US dollars. So yes, it is expensive, but it's a dressy watch. The dial is brilliant, the movement's brilliant, and it's packed full of history. At number 2, we have the Tudor Black Bay 54, a watch that was released around about 2 years ago, and for some reason, people seem to have forgotten about it because of the Tudor Black Bay Coskin Metas monochrome or the Tudor Black Bay GMT, but it's still a banging watch and brilliant for smaller wrists. This Black Bay 54 comes in at 37 millimeters in diameter. It comes in at 11.2 millimeters in thickness, which is wonderfully thin, and I do believe when you have slimmer wrists or you want a smaller watch, the thickness plays such a big part in that. Actually, I would argue that the thickness plays as big a part as the lug to lug. This watch is also waterproof to 200 meters, has a fully black anodized aluminium bezel. It has domed sapphire crystal glass, which gives this watch kind of a more vintage vibe. And it has a fully automatic caliber MT5400, which is COSC certified and has 70 hours of power. 70 hours slotted into that 11.2 millimeters in thickness. That's pretty wild. There's actually a load of tributes to the original Tudor Submariner on this watch that I've talked about in other videos. For example, the Lollipop secondhand. That is a definite tribute. And then also you have the different shaped crown to the previous. And then also the kind of bezel shape is more mirrored of the original Tudor Submariner. A brilliant watch for smaller wrists. And this watch comes in at £3,450. Next up, we have the Cartier Tank, a watch that is just fabulously dressy. I love the Cartier Tank. And for this watch, I don't want to specify a specific model because there's so many variants of this model that you can get. But let's put one on the screen and give you kind of some reference specs so that you can see. So this is a Cartier Tank small model. It has a white dial and a black leather strap, looking really, really dressy like Cartier normally do. This watch comes in at 33.7 millimeters in length and 25.5 millimeters in diameter. The thickness, because this is a quartz model, comes in at a brilliant 6.6 millimeters, which is just awesome. Now, I know this is a quartz model, but I think that quartz models kind of get a bad rap in the industry. I mean, technically speaking, they are more accurate than automatic watches, and I know as a watch collector, which you might be, you will probably side with the automatic watches, and I understand that, but I do think that quartz still have their place. Now, interestingly enough, the Cartier Tank was actually designed in 1917 by Louis Cartier, grandson of the founder of the company, and released in 1919. Essentially, they wanted to appeal to a wider male market. They thought that they were too female heavy, so they looked at the most masculine thing they possibly could and designed the watch based on what they saw. And at this point, the war was going on. So what they did is they looked at an FT-17 tank and designed it based on that, which is absolutely wild. It is funny to think that in those days, back in 1919-ish, this would have been considered a really masculine watch. And it just shows how much times have changed. Because this, I would consider now a lot more dressy and vintage looking. I would not consider it masculine. But in those days, it was huge. Now, because this comes in quartz, you definitely save a lot of money. So it comes in at £3,300. And now it's time for our giveaway. We are giving you the chance to win a Hamilton khaki field mechanical with a white dial to celebrate 75,000 subscribers. So thank you guys so much. You've honestly changed my life for the better, and I can't understate the impact that you have. So seriously, thank you. To enter this giveaway, all you need to do is subscribe to the channel, number 1. Comment with your favorite luxury watch below, that's number 2. And follow our Instagram at Chisholm Hunter Watches. Now, if you do want double points, if you want an additional entry, you don't need to do this, but you can if you want to. Fire over to our Into the Mind podcast, which is called the Into the Mind podcast, and give that a follow, subscribe, 5-star, whatever you want to do, and that will give you an extra entry. It's not needed, but it would be appreciated. And on that note, thank you guys so much for 75k, and good luck. Next on the list, we have a brilliant diver. This is the Tudor Pelagos 39mm. This watch comes in at 39mm in diameter and 11.8 millimeters in thickness. Again, it's beautifully thin. It also comes in grade 2 titanium. Now, titanium as a metal has more of a darker hue, a darker aesthetic to it. And because of that, it actually wears that little bit smaller because it doesn't catch the eye as much. It kind of is in like a stealth mode, which I quite like. The dial on this watch, of course, comes in black, as does the anodized bezel, and it's waterproof to 200 meters. It also has a COSC certified movement, which is the caliber MT5400, a fully automatic movement with 70 hours of power. In terms of a sports watch that's highly functional that also suits smaller wrists, this is honestly one of the best. I mean, it literally won the GPHG awards. It comes in at £4,140. Next on the list, we have a banger from a banging brand, and believe it or not, it's not Longines this time. It's actually Hamilton, with the Hamilton Khaki Field Murph Mini, released last year with the bracelet. Now, I've got a lot of opinions about the Murphs. I kind of believe that the Murph should be its own family within the khaki range. I don't think it should be associated with the khaki field Murph. I think it should just be the Murph. I think it should stand alone. I actually had a conversation with Vivian Chauffeur, the CEO of Hamilton, and I kind of pitched this to him. And he essentially told us why he didn't think it was a good idea, but I still think that would be a great idea to kind of segregate the two. You've got the Murph and then the khaki field, because you're not using this as a field watch. But anyway, onto the specs, and let me know what you guys think about that in the comments. The Hamilton Khaki Field Murph comes in at 38mm in diameter. It also comes in at 11.1mm in thickness. It's water resistant to 100 meters, comes in full stainless steel, and it has the caliber H10 movement with 80 hours of power, which is fully automatic. Now, the Murph watch was, of course, used in Interstellar, and if you haven't seen that movie, definitely go watch it. And the original was a lot bigger than 38mm. But I think what they got right on this watch is they didn't include the Morse code element on the second hand. And I think the reason that they got that right, actually, looking at it retrospectively, with the benefit of hindsight, is that they didn't segregate themselves off from a slice of the market. Like if you have 100,000 people that haven't seen Interstellar, they're not gonna buy this watch. So why would they want the Morse code in the dial? So they got rid of that, and I think as a result, it actually became more popular, even though it still carries the DNA of the Murph. This watch comes in at £935. If you want my advice on this, I would go with the black dial, because black tends to camouflage size that little bit, but there is also a white dial, and that's the one that I would go for, because I'm a sucker for white dials. Next on the list is a watch that everybody saw coming, but everybody was shocked and surprised that it got released last year. This is the Omega Aquaterra black lacquer dial. Now, there was 3 sizes released of this watch, but there's one in particular I would go for. So there was a 34mm, there was a 38mm, and there was a 41. I would advise for you guys with smaller wrists that might be watching this video to go for the 38. This watch comes in at 38mm in diameter, 12.3mm in thickness. The lug to lug comes in at beautiful 45.1mm. It of course has a black muted down lacquer dial, which everybody kind of knew that Omega would do, but they all still were shocked that they did it. And honestly, on the wrist, this thing is beautifully simplistic. It's just... It goes to prove that boring is better in the long run. I truly believe that. This watch also has the Omega caliber 8800, which is fully self-winding, and it has 55 hours of power. It also has a fully stainless steel bracelet. I would say that this watch definitely leans more to the dressy side, but on the same breath, I'd actually say that this is probably like an affordable Rolex Datejust. It comes in at £6,200. And next on the list, we actually have an affordable version of the Rolex Datejust. We have the Longines Conquest 38mm, which I would say is an affordable, what were we talking about? Omega Aquaterra, that's the one. The Longines Conquest 48 comes in various different colors. I mean, there's tons to choose between. You've got kind of a black charcoaly dial, a silver, a green, kind of champagne looking dial, a blue. There's so many to choose between. There's tons of options, and Longines is a banging brand doing banging things. This watch comes in at 38mm in diameter, as mentioned previously, 10.9mm in thickness, which is just beautifully thin. It also comes in at 46.8mm lug to lug. And it has a fully automatic movement, which is the caliber L888 movement with 72 hours of power. And we can see this movement used in other watches in Longines range. I honestly think these watches are just fantastically dressy and really suit any occasion. Longines with the Longines Hydro Conquest GMT, the Longines Conquest Chrono, the Longines Conquest, the Longines Ultra Chron that they released recently. They've just been doing absolutely unbelievable stuff, and their popularity is going like that. This watch comes in at a more affordable £2,000 comparatively to Omega's £6,000. Next on the list, we have the TAG Heuer Carrera glass box chronograph. This honestly vintage-inspired beauty of a watch. Now, we have gone over the history and what makes this watch kind of special in another video, so I'll leave you to kind of look at that if you want to look at that, but let's just talk about the specs. This watch comes in at 39mm in diameter, 13.9mm in thickness, and the lug distance between those lugs is about 20.7mm. It's water resistant to 100 meters and has the movement TH20-07 caliber with 80 hours of power. Now, there's so much history, there's so much beauty crammed into this watch, and without rambling too much, I honestly think it's one of the best watches that TAG have ever released, like literally ever. This watch comes in at £6,150. Next on the list, we have the IWC Mark 20 or the Mark XX. And I actually filmed one recently, which was the Mercedes Petronas Formula One version with the kind of light blue splashes on it, which I thought was just absolutely awesome. But honestly, you can go for any Mark 20 that you want because they're all equally as awesome. And the specs are just beautiful. But for reference, we'll talk about the Formula One. This watch comes in at 40mm in diameter, 10.6mm in height, and is water resistant to 10 bar. I feel like the Mark 20 is like the more wearable version of the Big Pilot. The Big Pilot is the icon, but to call the Mark 20 a pilot's watch isn't really true anymore. It's kind of been more refined for collectors that will just use it every day. It's more of an everyday beater than an actual tool watch now, but that's okay. It still looks beautiful and it can still do it. I mean, it still has sapphire crystal glass, which is secured against displacement by a drop in cabin pressure, which the Big Pilot does as well, which is just awesome. This watch also has the movement 32111 caliber, which is fully automatic with 120 hours of power and 163 components. And think about that thickness that we talked about earlier, and then think about the movement and the amount of components. That's why I love watchmaking. This watch comes in at £5,600, and remember that there's just tons of variations of this watch that you can get, and it looks brilliant on smaller wrists. The next watch we're going to talk about isn't a specific model, but rather a range, and it's the GLC Reverso range. But in particular, we're going to hone in on the monoface small seconds tribute Reverso, just so you guys have a reference point. This model comes in at 45.6 millimeters in length and 27.4 millimeters in diameter. It has a calfskin leather strap and has a brilliant manual winding movement with 42 hours of power. And that's the caliber 822. There's something beautiful about GLC watches. I'd say they probably are the best dress watches that you could buy. And I told this story the other day, but my brother, we were at Watches and Wonders filming GLC watches, filming the Reversos. And my brother said, you know, when I get married, I want to walk down the aisle with a GLC Reverso. And that kind of meant a lot to me. And as soon as he said that, I started looking more into GLC. And I realized that they're just absolute works of art. They define luxury. But in defining luxury, they also define a very, very steep price because there's so few of them and they're so hard to make. So this model comes in at £9,650. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please consider hitting that subscribe button if you have enjoyed. And remember to get involved in our giveaway, which is ending very, very soon. And on that note, I'll see you soon.